Hi all, I hope you're doing well and welcome to this Cine Circle event where we'll be discussing online film distribution. First things first, it would be fantastic if you guys could give me a thumbs up in the comments if you can hear me okay, if you can see me okay, and just to make sure that everything is working technically. Also, just feel free to say hello and also feel free to, network in the chat and so on. Throughout the talk, if you guys have any questions, any comments, anything like that, again, feel free to just pop that in the chat and we will make sure to answer your questions as soon as we can. So that said, we'll get started now, and I'd love to bring on Bradley from Ember Films, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and we'll get started on the discussion.
All right.
Hiya. How are you
doing, ZB?
Very good, very good. I hope all is going well. So first things first, it'd be fantastic if you could just introduce yourself, let everyone know about what you do and so on.
Sure. So my name is Bradley Coburn. I'm a principal at Ember Films. You did pronounce it correctly, so thank you for that. We get all kinds of pronunciations on that, but it is Ember. And I deal mainly with acquisitions. I deal with a lot of some of the communications as well. So Ember Films is really dedicated towards the independent filmmaker. There's a niche there that really wasn't filled by a lot of the distribution companies out there that were really fighting for independent filmmakers and not just acquiring the films and then putting them up on the shelf and kind of hoping they do well. We really fight for our filmmakers. We really fight for the independent filmmaker and try to provide access where currently, unfortunately, a lot of independent filmmakers are getting boxed out. So that's essentially who Ember is. That's what we do. That's our motto is do right by our filmmakers and pave the way and make it easier for them to get their film out there to a large enough audience that'll make a difference.
Great, and that's that's something that I'm sure a lot of filmmakers are interested in at the moment. How do you actually get your film out there? How do you get it seen? How can you make money off of especially an independent feature film, for example? So let's dive straight into some questions, perhaps, and let's maybe start off with what filmmakers should consider before the film is even made or before they think about distributing the film, when they start off the film. For example, are there certain genres that seem to do better? Are there certain lengths of films that tend to do better? When someone is thinking about creating a project, what are some things that they could consider to sort of try and set themselves up for success with online distribution as much as possible?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question because a lot of filmmakers, especially independent filmmakers who don't have studio backing or don't have a lot of money behind them, don't think about they only think about, okay, I'm gonna make the best film I can make. I'm thinking about these technical, what camera do I use, what sound guy do I hire, things like that. They don't think holistically. Okay, now that you've got it in the can, you're ready to go. How do you market it? How do you get it out there? How do you get it to an audience? And if you're at that point, then you've already wasted so much time. You need to begin right in pre-production, right before you're even thinking about what your what your schedule is going to be like. You need to think about, how am I going to build my audience? How am I going to get this film marketed? Especially if you don't have a name cast. We're talking to independent filmmakers and low and ultra low budget films. They really need to think about, how can I grow that audience, get them excited about my film that may come out in a year or 18 months. But you need to build that. You need to be on social media. You need to be pushing the film as much as possible. If you have a teaser, if you have a cast, video that you can put out there that's funny. But the main point is, you really need to think about, how am I going to start building my audience before I'm even, first day on set. And most filmmakers really don't think about that. And when we get it from the distribution side from an independent filmmaker, we can tell if they've done their research. Have they started to build an audience? Do they have a following that day one is going to pay for a rental fee or a purchase fee? And unfortunately, a lot of filmmakers don't think about that, and they don't do that work at the beginning. So that I think, I'm often asked by filmmakers, what's the one piece of advice that you would give? And they always think it's, well, how can I make money here? Where do I put it? What platform do I put it on here? But it's really build your audience, build, who is going to be excited for your film on day one, because if they're excited, that's going to play into the algorithms because they're going to pay for it. They're going to watch it, and then it's going to get recommended to other people, and it's just going to snowball. So if I had to kind of talk about, that one piece of advice or what to do marketing wise or building up your audience, that's really what needs to be a focus, as well as the creative part of it and what the film is going to be.
Okay, well, that's really interesting, and we'll definitely dive a little deeper into how we can, build that audience. But maybe let's, sort of almost working backwards. I'd like to ask, when a filmmaker comes to you and says, I'd love to work with you, I'd like to, get your help distributing my film. I mean, I assume you have, a selection process where you decide which films you can take on board and which don't. How do you decide which films, you think, okay, this film might do well or this one might won't? What are these sort of criteria?
Yeah, so currently we're at less than 5% of the films that we get pitched, we actually take on. We're really selective. We have a number of different criteria, and it's not always about the film. It's also about the filmmaker. So I'll kind of break down what we look for. Obviously, genre and saleability is important, and I'll talk a little bit about that because you touched on that earlier. If you're talking about genres, there are certain genres that will sell easier. There's action, there's sci-fi. The ones that are more difficult, horror obviously is there's a built-in audience for horror, and then you start getting into some of the subgenres of horror, and there's a built-in audience there. So if you want the easiest road, I think people will tell you horror is the genre that you go to. You'll also get picked up for distribution a lot easier with a horror film than you will for a drama. And there's a few different reasons for that. But if you have a drama with no name cast, you're going to have a really tough road to hoe to get that audience built and to get the distribution company that's going to take a flyer on it, because it's less easy to sell internationally as well. Because if you think about things like action and horror, they translate internationally much better than drama. Korean dramas are completely different from American dramas, right? So there's certain genres there that you can focus on, but we don't like to we're an all genre distributor. We will take all genres, and the reason we do that is because we don't want to restrict our filmmakers and say, well, we're only going to take horror and really put that out in the world, because honestly, we don't want just horror out there, right? We want good dramas. We want good rom-coms, good comedies. But just understand as a filmmaker, when you're putting your hard-earned money into and your sweat equity into these genres, you're going to have a harder time if you don't have a name cast. So go in eyes open with that. Our selection criteria is essentially, one, do we love the film? If it's a film that we love and we believe in, we're going to get behind it. And that makes it a lot easier for our team to go out there and market it, go out there and put money behind it because we feel like there's an audience to be had there, right? But also the filmmaker. We never accept a film without talking to the filmmaker first. And we've unfortunately declined films that we thought were good because we had conversations with the filmmaker where we did not feel like they were as committed as they would need to be. Honestly, the work doesn't end, when picture lock, it doesn't end when everything's ready and in the can and ready to be shipped off. That's not when it ends. It ends when you've made the money you want to make, a few years down the line, and you're ready to move on to your next one. So the conversations we have with filmmakers, we want to see, one, do they have a creative vision? Do they have an interesting vision? Do they have an interesting take on things? I like to say that, and this may not be I may have stolen this quote from somewhere, but essentially it's there's no real original stories, but we're looking for people who tell non-original stories in original ways. The way that you can tell these stories is important, right? And are they motivated? Are they going in with eyes wide open? We often talk to independent filmmakers that, they shoot it, for less than $10,000 and they're expecting a $500,000 return. It's just not going to happen, and we'll tell them that up front. And we're as absolutely honest as we can be with filmmakers, and we've like I said, we've turned down films, and we've had filmmakers turn us down because they didn't think that that we were going to push it enough to make $500,000. So
Sure.
our selection process is, again, twofold. It's about the filmmaker and it's about the film. Saleability kind of plays into that, obviously, with the film, but also with a filmmaker, it's those that creative vision, that do we want you to be a part of our family and in our stable? Do we feel like you're going to do right by your film and do right by Ember? And can we do right by you? So.
Okay, great. And we've got a first question over here from Simon, which is, do you take documentary films as well?
We do. It's getting a little bit more difficult, I'll be honest with you. Docs used to be a lot easier to sell, and they're still out there. But if you're looking at the independent filmmaker, and I'm framing it in that context, the low budget doc, there's been some pressure and some retraction of the industry with Amazon restricting documentaries and short films. We take short films as well, but we take docs, we take short films, we take narratives. With documentaries, we've had to shift and look at other platforms that we built relationships with. Amazon was always a decent earner, but unfortunately, with that not available, it hurts the independent filmmaker and the ultra low budget filmmaker the most.
Okay, great. And I see. And we've got some questions over here in terms of, specific questions about dramas and short films. And I think we're going to cover a lot of that as we go into, the actual how to market that film once it's online. And we can talk about perhaps which platforms are best for, short films, which platforms might be better for docs or for feature films, and so on. But before we get into, right, your film is on Amazon, what do you do next? Let's talk about just a couple of points before that. There's been some very conflicting things that I've heard in the last couple of weeks about film festivals and whether they help with distribution. Some people say absolutely not. As a matter of fact, if you include your festival, laurels on a DVD cover or something, it will make people think, oh, this is going to be, some art house film. And some people say, no, it's great. Do you have an opinion on whether festivals can help, for example, when releasing a film on Amazon? Do they make a difference?
Yes. Laurels make a difference. They are getting diluted, but anything you can do, I'll talk about this in two parts. One, I think your first part of your question may have been about distribution and distributors. Do they, does it hamper you with distributors? Second part of that is, does it hamper you with marketing on Amazon, for instance? My opinion, and it's backed up by the data that we have on our films, is laurels, when accepted on your key art, are good. Don't throw 100 on there. If you have a really great one, highlight that one. We have a film that was part of Rain Dance. The film's Out of Innocence, a Fiona Shaw film. And we highlight that not only on our Blu-ray release, but also we highlight it as much as we can on our marketing. So I'm of the opinion, again, backed by the data that we have, laurels do help. But again, don't throw 40 laurels up there with terrible key art and expect that it's gonna help. That's not gonna work. So my opinion is they do help. Now on the distribution side for festivals, so there's a couple of different things to keep in mind. Typically, distributors will find you at festivals. There are a lot of festivals where a lot of distributors play, where they have contacts where they'll pick up. We do as well. We deal with some festivals where they'll contact us and say, hey, you should take a look at this film. It might fit your catalog. So in terms of festivals, that can absolutely help you with distribution. Just be careful about oversaturating. Be careful about putting your film out there. If it's a festival that puts it out there for everyone to see, then that's going to be a problem because the distributor is not going to want to deal with obviously previously exploited film. In addition to that, just do your due diligence on the festival, understand what you're getting in, understand what they will provide, understand what kind of lift you get from it. We're a big proponent of festivals at Ember. We love the festival process. We have a couple of films that we're holding back until their festival run is done, which is typically what happens. But yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's very helpful. It's great to get that perspective. And what about sort of very limited, cinema releases and, some smaller art house cinema? I'm not talking about a big cinema release. I'm talking, a couple of cinemas. Does that something like that? Because I heard, it can help, get interest from press, from reviews that normally, only review films which have had even just one little cinema release. Does that help you feel with online distribution?
Yeah, it absolutely can. But the thing about it is you have to make sure you're going to get the return, right? So if you're going to four-wall and go into a week run in an LA theater, for instance, you might get reviewed by the LA Times. You might get a Rotten Tomatoes page. You'll get some additional perks that come along with that. But guess what? You're paying for that four-walling, and you better make sure that, one, you can eat that cost or you can get the ROI on it. Because again, we're talking about smaller budget films, or you can sell those tickets to make up for that. We do a kind of a boutique service for any of our filmmakers that want to have a premiere in a theater. Obviously, that's been dead for a bit, and it's starting to come back up with the pandemic. But we essentially will contact and be in touch with the theaters, understand what the cost is, what it would take to kind of have that premiere or have that run of a week, and provide that service to our filmmakers. They would be responsible for the four-walling fees as well as an additional administrative fee to us, and then we would handle the logistics and kind of get everything up and running, whether we have to do a digital cinema package or if we can deliver by Blu-ray to the theater.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. Okay. So let's maybe dive into this online distribution and get straight into it. So if we're thinking about the marketing specifically, what are some of the key things? And then, we can sort of, after maybe naming some of them, we can go into, the specifics. But what are some of the key things you should think about before putting your film on an online platform in terms of your marketing? What are some of the things that you should put together?
Yeah, so obviously we talked about building the audience, but you need to really have, so people talk about trailer and key art, right? Key art meaning your poster or what you're going to present to the viewer when they click. If you think about it, you click through Netflix and you're seeing the key art and you select it and you watch that film, right? Key art is extremely important. In my opinion, if you're talking about a spur of the moment decision, I know my viewing habits, and I think probably most of your viewers, if they don't know what they're watching or they don't know what they want to watch, if they go through Amazon Prime Video, a lot of times they're just looking at that key art and saying, oh, let me take a flyer on this and watch it, right? A lot of times they don't even click through to the trailer. They don't take the time to watch the 2 or 3 minute trailer. So trailers are less important, but still important. But key art is vitally important. And I would not spare an expense in terms of that. A lot of people think they have Photoshop skills. A lot of filmmakers think they are amazing artists when it comes to creating key art. And I can tell you that is categorically false. And I can tell you that because I am also a terrible artist, and I can recognize bad art. And I can recognize art that will not get you clicks. So that's vitally important. Make sure that you spend the money or spend the time, if you do have the skill, to create great key art. Obviously building up your audience, getting the word out there through social media, connecting with Facebook groups, connecting with other filmmakers who would be open to, helping you out, promote your film, and understand that the first, 10 to 14 days of your release is really important. When you talk in terms of the algorithms for Amazon Prime or iTunes or wherever you're putting it, you want the most people possible to be recommended your film And that comes from having a huge, snowball at the beginning that you can really build off of that. And then once you do that, you'll see, and we've seen it with our films. It doesn't always happen, but it happens enough that we're confident that it works. That if you build it up in the beginning, build your viewership up in the beginning, rentals, purchases, because typically you're going to start out with that in your windowing. You're going to go TVOD, which is transactional, so purchase and rental. If you build that up and get enough people, your friends, your family, whoever you can get to pay that fee, it's going to snowball and get in more feeds, and then more people are going to watch it, and then it's just going to continue to snowball. So that's really vital when you're talking about self-distribution. You need to pay attention to those things.
Okay. And in terms of, for example, getting reviews, getting press, getting journalists, or even bloggers interested in, and sort of approaching them, is that something you should start doing before you release the film? Should you start, trying to, send links to the film to journalists beforehand to get those reviews in before you even launch on, say, Amazon or iTunes? Or should you do that the day that you launch, for example?
No, you should absolutely do prior to launch. You can't wait until the day of, because again, we're talking about that critical 10 to 14 day period. And if you're just engaging with PR, on the day that you launch, you're already behind the 8 ball. You're not going to get a review within 30 days. It's just not going to happen unless you find some small blogger that's willing to do it. But then you're not going to get the kind of lift that you want. You need to engage with them, 60 days prior, have a screener available. Be engaging, make it interesting when you send an email. Don't send an email and just say, hey, take a look at my film. Most people are not going to click through that, especially if they get, 10 or 20 of those a day. Send an EPK, send a press kit. These are things that you kind of learn as you go through the process, each film, what works and what doesn't. But PR is notoriously hard. There's a moat for a reason. There's a reason that people pay to get PR, and we do as well, because just cold calling or cold emailing journalists and anyone that would have a major impact. Again, I'm not talking about the small bloggers. Those places are great, and they can get you in Google News and get you some views. But it is difficult for an independent filmmaker who's self-distributing to get great PR if they don't have connections. It's difficult for us to get great PR without paying and going through a PR firm. There are some PR firms that work with filmmakers that you could go through. You will have to pay a bit of money, but again, you can see the return, especially if you start to get good press prior to the release, and then you start to get those views and get those eyeballs and snowball. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to think outside the box. In terms of, we connect with YouTube personalities, we connect with trailer sites that, not the ones that have 100 views, but the ones that have 100,000 or 500,000. You'd be surprised in some of the new media areas where you'll get ahead that you wouldn't in the old media areas, and they can really have an impact, and they're really great to work with. And a lot of them, at least some of the trailer sites we work with, for instance, don't even ask for a fee. They just want that exclusive to put up on their site, and they monetize it. So think outside the box.
And what are some examples of, for example, trailer sites? I mean, do you actually mean like websites, or do you mean like YouTube channels that do
YouTube channels? So
YouTube.
Yeah, there's like movie coverage, movie trailers now, something like that. There's a bunch of different ones that are out there. What I would do if I was self-distributing, I would go out, do a YouTube search for movie trailers, go to each one of those channels and try to find the contact information, reach out to them. And we have a saying at Ember, silence is not a no. So if you just ignore us, we're going to continue and continue and continue until you either tell us stop emailing me or stop contacting me, or you agree. And we've had a number of outlets that we do guerrilla marketing with that have agreed after 5 or 6 emails of us just pestering them. So don't be afraid to do that. Silence is not a no. You're trying to get your film out there. You're trying to get the most viewership you possibly can. So just don't be shy about it.
Okay. And sort of just quickly coming back to PR and PR companies specifically. I mean, one that I keep hearing over and over again from a lot of filmmakers is October Coast. It's an Australian company, so that's one that I always hear because apparently they're quite affordable. Are there any specific companies that you'd recommend? And can you maybe give us like I know this can vary a lot, but perhaps like a rough outline of how much they would cost for an indie filmmaker?
Yeah, that's a difficult question because they are so varied, and it depends on the process. I've heard good things about October Coast. I've not, we have not used them. If you're talking about distributors who will work in volume, you're talking about thousands upon thousands of dollars, right? But you're getting multiple films and multiple films out with PR. If you're talking about independent filmmaker, I would say you probably need a budget at least 2,500 if you're really wanting to make a push. You can get out there for 500 US. But honestly, if you really want to try to make that push, I would say the minimum, and this is a roundabout number, because obviously we don't work with these companies, but I've seen prices and I've seen kind of the services that they offer. I would say 2,500 is a good ballpark to get you out there. But don't just spend 2,500 US and say, I'm done, we're good. You got to get out there. You have to push your film. I tell our filmmakers this all the time. No one cares more about your film than you do. And if you don't care about it, then nobody else is going to. So you really need to put in the work. You need to, if you have a team, and you don't want to do it, but you can make your team do it, then someone needs to put in the work to get out there and push the film and get it in front of as many eyes as possible. I mean, you look at some of the studio films. I know everyone's probably had this experience where, a big budget film comes out and you're like, I didn't even know it was out, but it's in my wheelhouse. Like, I would love this film. Like, me personally, I love time travel. I love sci-fi, right? And when a film comes out that I haven't heard about, but it's a big budget film, I wonder, what are they really spending? Like, where are they spending their ad dollars? So, think about that. Think about, where you're going to spend your ad dollars, who you're going to spend it with, but also get out there and grind. Get out there and get on Reddit, get on social media, get on every possible place you can get on. Don't just spam, but be an advocate for your film for those people that would be interested in watching it.
Okay, that's really interesting. And let's dive into something a little more specific. We got a question here from William. What are best strategies to sell a drama with no name cast? And I'm wondering because, if you got a horror film, there are some great Reddit threads and Facebook groups where you can have this niche audience. It's great. You show a horror film, people love it. But if you've got a drama with no cast, do you, for example, at Ember, use different strategies to try and build that audience or promote that film?
Yes, in addition to or alongside the filmmaker. So the correct question is not where do I sell a drama? The correct question is who is my audience? Who am I trying to reach? Because one drama may reach one audience and not reach another audience, right? So you want to understand your niches. You want to understand which audiences you're going for, and that's really vital. Is audience identification, and that's one of the big things that we do as well. And then you want to reach out to them. So, for instance, if Pinterest is going to be a great avenue to reach the audience that I think it's going to reach, then I'm going to start posting on Pinterest. I'm going to learn everything I can about Pinterest, and I'm going to post 30-second clips. I'm going to post trailers. I'm going to go on Facebook groups that I think would be interested in this drama. So don't think about it specifically as genre. Think about it as what is my niche. If I am, if I have a film about car racing, right? I'm not just going to shotgun approach and go, well, 60% of males as opposed to 15% of females like car racing. I'm not just going to go and spend money to send it to every male on the planet, right? Wouldn't make any sense. What I'm doing is I would say, okay, who's interested in cars? Who attends NASCAR races? Who attends Formula One? And then I'm going after that niche. And that's really where you're going to pinpoint and not spend ad dollars or spend time unnecessarily. So again, just to recap, don't think about just genre. Where am I going to push this genre? Break down your film objectively, understand who is going to be interested in it. And you might be wrong, but spend a little bit to see if you're wrong. If you don't get that ROI, or if you don't get that interest, go back in, start thinking about it again. You may cobble together or piece together multiple niche audiences that have some crossover that would be interested in it. So that's the way that we think about it. That's the way that I would implore any filmmaker on budget to think about pushing their film or marketing their film as well.
Okay. And are there any big differences between short films and feature films? So we got, someone over here who's asking, is there actually an interest for short films? Is it something that you can make money from online, or, and what are perhaps some different strategies for doing that?
Yeah. So we take in short films because, one, if we fall in love with the film, and we love the medium of short film, but frankly, you're not going to make money. You won't. If you get an Oscar nod, you may not even make your budget back. So don't think of short films as a way to generate revenue. It's a little bit different in Europe, outside of the States. I'm speaking mainly the States, but there are outlets in Europe that are there. There's some worldwide as well, like Shorts TV, Amuleto, Alter for sci-fi. There's places like that you can have your short put out there, but you really need to understand your goal. If your goal is to make money from a short film, don't make the film. It's not going to happen. It's just not. I mean, I don't mean to throw a wet blanket on it, but it just won't. If you're looking to get it out there, it's to maybe have, we've heard from filmmakers that have gotten feature film directorial debuts from their shorts, right? I mean, it's a calling card. It still is. It's a way for you to hone your skills. So there are ways to get it out there, and I would recommend. We're one of the few distribution companies that still does take shorts, and we're starting to kind of rein that in a bit because of the lift of doing QC and the resources that we spend to bring it in. But we still take the really great ones because we want them to have as big of an audience as possible. But don't be afraid to go out there and connect with, your Shorts TV, your Omelettos, your places that will take it. And if they don't take it, put it on YouTube, put it on, your Facebook, put it anywhere you can to be seen. And maybe that one eye that you want to see it will see it. But again, the only thing I would say is don't look to generate revenue. It's not going to happen. Look for additional opportunities that you can generate revenue by showing your skills through short film.
Yeah, that's very good advice. And now let's, we'll go into sort of the different platforms that you can use. What are the pros and cons of some of them? And we actually have a question specifically about your company. Someone has been looking at the website already, and they say that you mentioned that you have aggregator services, mention iTunes, Google Play, Microsoft, but not Amazon. And then in the submission page, it says if your film has been on Amazon, we cannot accept it. So the question is, what's the deal with Amazon and Ember?
Yeah, so good question. So let's talk about it. It's kind of a two-pronged question when we talk about aggregation. And we recently contracted with a preferred aggregator. And when you're talking about aggregation, you're talking about those platforms that are gate kept, right? There's gatekeepers at those platforms, your iTunes, your Google Play, your Xbox, et cetera. These platforms you cannot get on as an independent filmmaker, as self-distributing. You can only get on them if you pay a fee through an aggregator. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of aggregators are restricting or retrenching and either not taking on as much or charging more and more fees to be able to get you on those platforms. Well, as I said at the beginning, what we are attempting to do and what our motto is we're trying to provide access to independent filmmakers where it seems like everyone else is trying to kind of get away from it and restrict access. So the aggregation services are different. The aggregation services mean if you want to self-distribute, you can go through us, take advantage of the discount that we get by going through a preferred aggregator because we have volume. And you can take advantage of that and pay a smaller fee to get onto those platforms. Now, what we take in-house is different. So what we actually distribute, we don't want you to have previously exploited the film. It doesn't make sense for us because we're gonna dedicate time and resources, which means money, into the film. And if it's already out there on Amazon, on YouTube, or wherever, then we're not going to see a return. It makes no sense for us. So it's really two different questions there.
Okay. So, but I think the main answer for that person asking is that you do, help with Amazon. It's not that you don't release the films on Amazon. It's
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Amazon is one of the first places that will go up on TVOD. So, another thing we may not have time to get into, but I just want to touch on it quickly, is as an independent filmmaker, if you're self-distributing, learn about windowing because you can leave money on the table if you don't learn about windowing. I'll tell you real quickly, just a high level what that is. Windowing means you go transactional, which is TVOD, so your purchases and your rentals first. So if you're going to put it up on Amazon, for instance, put it up for 30, 60 days where the audience can only purchase it or rent it because that's going to be your most diehards. They're going to want to see the film. They're going to pay you. Then you can move to a Prime, for example, which is SVOD. And then you move to AVOD, which is, your Tubies, your Plutos, places like that. So understand windowing. If you just throw it out there, goodness forbid you throw it on YouTube for free. Don't do that unless you have a giant audience that you can monetize. But if you just throw it out there for SVOD right off the bat, meaning Prime on Amazon, and don't take advantage of purchases and rentals, you're going to hamstring yourself there. Now, the caveat to that is if I know that I can get a large number of people to watch this in the first few days on Prime, I will put it out there for a few days on Prime to get that momentum, and then we'll move into a TVOD strategy and do the typical windowing.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. So on Prime, you might actually put it on for free for people on Prime for a couple of days. Yeah. You get a bunch of views, you trigger that algorithm a little bit on Amazon, and then you turn it into a paid and rent it. Well, that's really, really interesting. I've never heard that, but it makes perfect sense. Yeah. And that's that's a really good workflow to have. So that kind of explains that TVOD, SVOD, and then AVOD, the advertising video on demand, right? And it's interesting because there's probably the more you go down that funnel, the more options you have. But let's talk a little bit about in each one of those three kind of phases, I'd say, what are some of the main platforms that a filmmaker could consider?
Sure. So when you talk about TVOD, you're talking about obviously Amazon. You're really limited.
And sorry, just because we've got a question about what all of this is actually for. So could you maybe explain, just for anyone who doesn't know, what is TVOD, SVOD, and AVOD?
Oh, sure. So TVOD is absolutely TVOD is transactional video on demand, and that means your electronic sell-through. So if people purchase your, let's say on Amazon, let's take that for instance. If people purchase or rent your film on Amazon, that's TVOD. And then SVOD is subscription video on demand. That's any subscription services. So Prime. So people don't have to pay a per watch fee, but they have to have Prime. They had to have paid for that subscription, or Netflix, for instance. And then you have AVOD, which is advertising video on demand or ad supported video on demand. And that's your Tubies or your Plutos, the places where people can go and just watch the film, and they roll an ad every 12 minutes or so. So that's the three major. There's a couple other that kind of pop up here and there, but that's the three major VODs.
Okay, great. And now back to which platforms should you use for each one? What are the pros and cons for each?
Yeah. So let me give some advice here, and if you're self-distributing, you are going to be really limited on where you can put your film. You will not have access to places like Tubi, Pluto, Hulu, any of these places. You just won't. You have to go through a sales rep or you have to go through a distributor. Now, here's where you can go. You can go as a self-distributor. You can go to Amazon. You can go through an aggregator, and you can get on a Google Play, iTunes. You can even pitch to Hulu. You just pay a fee, and those fees are fairly pretty steep. To give you an idea, we discount on 3 platforms, on iTunes, Google Play, and Xbox. We discount to $19.95, so $1,995 US for those 3 platforms. Typically, it's around the $2,300 to $2,500 mark. So it can be expensive to get on those platforms, but you have access. You have access through aggregators. When you start talking about SVOD, again, you have Amazon. You can always contact platforms if you watch them. Like, you can contact Tubi, you can contact Pluto, but I can tell you without a doubt, because I've heard it straight from the horse's mouth, if you don't have multiple films, they're not going to roll their lawyers up to start that contract. It just won't happen. So you are very limited, unfortunately. And there's a lot of gatekeeping in this industry. So what I would advise, and I advise all filmmakers, if you want to self-distribute, that's great. Do it through Amazon. See if you can be successful there. Amazon is a huge platform. You can push people there. A ton of people have Prime in the US. Even I think in the UK as well, we do fairly well with our UK sales as well. You can push it there. If you want to, you can pay the fee to get on iTunes, Google Play, etc. You can make some money there. It'll take a little bit longer tail. Amazon is starting to eat into, or has been eating into, your iTunes revenue for quite a bit. But I'll tell you that streaming is shifting. The industry is shifting. It's shifting towards an AVOD model, which is your Tubis, your Plutos, Zumos, places like that. And you're going to have a hard time. So I would implore you, if you really want to go that route, to talk to a sales rep, talk to a distributor, and vet them as best you can, and find the best deal for you. Because in the end, the 20% or 25% or even 30% that you have to give up in your revenue, you're going to recoup that just from the AVOD. AVOD is really blowing up right now. Tubi in particular, you're getting a lot of eyeballs.
Okay. And is this something, if someone comes to you, for example, because I know, for example, let's say Film Hub is something that like most people have heard of. You give them their film, I think they charge you 20%, and, they'll put it like 100 different platforms, right? Yeah. Which are a lot of like AVOD mainly platforms and so on. How are you different from that? And I know, part of it, there's sort of 2 bits. How are you different in that, in terms of, Film Hub doesn't help you at all with your marketing. They'll just put it on there and everything is completely up to you. And second of all, how do you work in terms of putting the films up on platforms? How do you help filmmakers do that? And, how many platforms can filmmakers expect to be put on, for example, if they go through you?
Good question. So in terms of Film Hub or anyone like that and a distributor, there's a distinct differences there. Now, sometimes the filmmaker, it may make more sense to go through a Film Hub. If you're really good at marketing, or if you feel like, I can get out there and spend money and get my film out there, then that's a good option. They take 20%. I think they're easy to work with. I think that's not a bad option at all. You won't get on the Google Plays or the iTunes if you want to get on those platforms, but you'll get on a number of other platforms. You'll get on those AVOD platforms, which is vitally important. Be a little cautious, and this is with distributors as well, but be a little cautious. There's places that like Distributors that have gone out of business and taken filmmakers' films with them, right? So just be cautious. Make sure the contract that you sign has language in it that everything will revert back to you if there is
Oh, sorry guys. I think we lost Bradley there for a second. I'm sure he's going to be coming back in a moment, but I think he's just come off the stream. Oh, and there he is back again.
Sorry, I had a call.
No worries. I thought you ran away for a second.
No, not run away from the question. So so if I get my train of thought back, so Film Hub has its place. Be careful. Make sure your contract, any contract you sign with anyone, has the ability to revert the rights back to you if they go out of business, they go into bankruptcy. That's going to be really important. We found that out with distributor, and we don't want any filmmakers to kind of fall into that as well. But yeah, Film Hub has its place, absolutely, 100%. With distributors such as Ember or with really other distributors, what you're getting is kind of a package. You're getting a team that's has connections, has those conversations on a daily basis with platforms. We're not just kind of contacting them out of the blue and saying, hey, would you mind taking this? No, we have a list of avails that we send over, and they will they'll take it on or they won't take it on. So you're paying really for access, but you're also paying for connections through a distributor. We take typically our deal is an 80-20 deal, and that's 20 to us and 80% to the filmmaker. And we'll put marketing dollars behind it. We'll put, we pay the fees essentially. So if you don't have captions, you don't have key art, you don't have, some of the technical things that you need, we actually front that money, and then we'll recoup that through the revenue. So there's different ways that you can go about it if you're an independent filmmaker. It just needs to fit kind of what you're looking to do. But I have no bad things to say about Film Hub. I have no bad things to say about any distributor. But if I've heard, bad stories from some distributors, so just be wary of that. Understand what you're getting into. Understand the contract. We've had filmmakers come to us that ultimately didn't sign with us, but sent us a contract that we would look over and give them advice on. So we're just trying to be an advocate for the independent filmmaker and make sure that the dark art of distribution, as it were, dies, and there's some light in this space.
Okay, that's really interesting. And let's maybe dive into just a couple more specifics, I guess, for people who'd be interested, in getting in touch with you regarding the fees and so on. It's really interesting that, you cover some things, such as captioning and so on. And just to clarify, do you recoup that from the 20%, or do you have something that says the first money that come in will recoup that and then it will be 80-20?
Yeah, so it's first money in. So for the first dollar that comes in, if you decide, so we're different from other distributors in that we allow our filmmakers to opt in or opt out of any of the expenses. It's not a one size fits all. If you go with other distributors, unfortunately, they'll say, all right, well, there's a $7,500 fee off the top, and there's just nothing you can do about it. If you want to go with us, that's the fee, right? That's a distribution fee. What we do is we say, well, if you're confident that you can go out there and you can market it, and you just need us to kind of be your advocate, and we'll do guerrilla marketing, things like that, free marketing. We'll push your film and put it on our website and push it out to the platforms. You can opt out of every expense that we have. But if you don't have captions, if you don't have key art, if you don't have some of the technical things, you need to opt into those. But we give the filmmaker the option of doing that because, again, it's not a one size fits all. We don't feel like every film needs to have $7,500 of revenue lopped off the top of it. If you as a filmmaker can go out there and push your film and you feel confident in it, the first dollar that comes in, we'll start paying you on it if you opt out of everything.
Okay. Well, that's great. That's really interesting. So let's maybe dive into a little bit more, sort of promoting and so on, your film, and let's talk maybe a little bit about, for example, Amazon. It's a specific one because I want to talk a little bit about reviews and how they can help. Especially, for example, Amazon, for anyone who doesn't know, owns IMDb. So reviews on IMDb and Amazon and their algorithm are probably very closely connected. So first of all, I want to ask, how important are reviews? And second of all, is there such a thing, as it's I heard from some filmmakers, it's good to get reviews even if they're bad because they help with some sort of algorithm. What are your opinions on reviews in general?
Yeah, so there's two parts of that. So there's the part that will help with the algorithm. And then there's the part, will it help with the viewer that's looking at a review and saying, well, this film's got 2 stars. Do I really want to watch it? Right. So if you're talking about the viewer, you really need to be careful about saying that any review is a good review. Again, just think about your watch patterns. And we have noticed, and we're very data driven. We've noticed that a low star rating does affect the interest of a viewer to purchasing or renting specifically your film. So be careful about that. But reviews are very helpful. There is a black box in Amazon, obviously through their CER ranking and how they promote. They're not going to come out and tell anyone. Reviews do play into that. I know there's additional guidance from Amazon recently that it'll play less of a role. So we don't know the percentage. We don't know if it goes to 1% or if it was 50%, now it's 20%. But I can tell you, get your friends, get your family, get your audience to watch the film and review the film. They can go hand in hand. They absolutely can help you with the algorithm. Absolutely will help you with, if you have good reviews, with other viewers. So yeah, if you should take that seriously, and you should absolutely put it out there, and get people to review it, and push that as much as possible.
Okay, and when we talk about Amazon's algorithm, what are some of the other things that actually influence it in terms of the film?
Yeah, so it's watch time. So if someone just watches 2 minutes of the film and then turns it off, then that's not going to help. If one person watches it 20 times, but you have nobody else watching it, that's obviously not going to help. Location, there's locational effects there. If you have, 90% of your viewers from one particular area, that may be fraught with viewer fraud, things like that. They take notice of those things. Key art, overall, just overall quality of the film. We see Amazon really being more selective now, and they're denying films that they denied a film that we had under distribution that we feel is a fantastic film. It's an indie drama, one location, but the filmmaker on another film had been accepted in Austin Film Festival, and we really love their work. But it got declined. It got denied from Amazon. So there's again a black box behind some of it, but those are some things to really pay attention to. Make your key art interesting. We've noticed that certain genres are getting through, whether we consider them it's subjective, but whether we consider them good film, bad film, high production quality, low production quality. Like horror seems to just get a pass to go in, which makes sense because, well, I mean, you think about it, and there's, because there's a built-in audience. Some of the horror films that we have on Amazon, for instance, will outperform some of the other films because there's that built-in audience. People are just looking for horror. They don't care anything. They just want to watch a horror film, right? So that's Amazon's a data-driven company too. That's why that happens. But those are some of the factors that kind of go into it. But again, having a distributor or having someone who has that much data, who has a record of, okay, I know, here's what's working, here's what isn't working, here's how things shift. It's a lot harder to understand that or to derive that from one film than it is if you have 100 films or what have you on there. So, just read a lot. If you're self-distributing independent filmmaker, read as much as you can. Go into the Amazon help documents. They provide a lot of good information. Go on to independent filmmaker forums. Go on to distribution forums. There's a lot of good Facebook groups. There's a lot of great information out there that can help you.
Okay. I had an interesting question, which is there any discrimination based on the age of the filmmaker? Which is interesting. I'm guessing you have to be 18 in order to put your film on the platforms, but
well, to be able to sign the contract, yeah, in America, that may be different in other countries, but we send everything through legal. So if you're 15 years old, you need to get your parents' permission to sign the contract. But I in terms of age discrimination, doubt it. I mean, we have a filmmaker who I think is in his 70s, and he's made a fantastic short film we fell in love with. And we didn't even know when we talked to him that he sounds 30, so I don't think it plays. I don't see why it would, right? It would make sense to me that there'd be any discrimination there. If you have specific instances, maybe we can talk about those, but otherwise, I don't think it plays.
Okay. And on most of the platforms, I mean, do you have to even put in your age as the filmmaker of the thing? It's not a...
Well, you have to sign up, right? So you'll have to put in your tax information and put in all your information. So they'll know it. But we haven't specifically looked at that in the data. But again, it wouldn't make sense to me why that would happen. These platforms don't care if you're 100 or 18. They want a film that's going to make them money and therefore make you money.
Okay. And have you noticed, specifically in the last, say, 6 months or year, or maybe max year and a half, any specific trends in terms of platforms that are starting to do a lot better, that you could take a look at, that were up and coming perhaps a year ago and that right now seem to do really well, or ones where perhaps they're slowly dying?
Yeah, so the biggest one is Tubi. Tubi is really the big boy on the block in terms of AVOD. You have your Plutos, you have places like Plex who are still smaller, but one thing to keep in mind is just because they're small now, they may not be small in 2 years. So your income and your revenue will grow over time. So get in with them if you can now. Because a lot of times, like Tubi, for instance, used to take independent filmmaker submissions, and now they've really blocked that. They really want to go through distributors specifically, or even sales reps. So places like that. If you want to get in the education market or the library, there's Hooplas, Canopy, but the ones that you're going to make your revenue off of are going to be your iTunes, are going to be your, to some extent, Google Play. Those are diminishing. Your Amazons, and Amazon is, in my opinion, they're hurting themselves with restricting their content. But it is what it is. But I think that they're going to diminish for the independent filmmaker and possibly box a lot of indie filmmakers out, unfortunately. Your Tubis, places like that. Your major revenue is going to come from there if you're not selling to specific territories, or if you're not selling to a Hulu, for instance, or someone who will pay you a licensing fee for your film.
Okay, really interesting. So we're nearly at the end now. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. But in the meantime, I wanted to ask you, if any of the filmmakers would like to work with you. First thing, do you ever talk to filmmakers before the film is finished, or do you always, do people always need to come to you with a finished film?
So we'll talk to filmmakers if they're in post. And if we've worked with you before, we actually are contracted with a few filmmakers who are in pre-production. So we're okay with that because, you kind of know what the process is. We know how you are as a filmmaker. We know what kind of quality film that you're creating. But typically we'll wait until post to interact. If you have questions though, don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach us on the website. It's films@ember.com. Any questions you have, we'll be happy to reach out. Myself, or we have Megan, who will be happy to handle a lot of communications with our filmmakers. So if you want to reach us, you can go to ember.com. You can send an email to films@ember.com. We're happy to talk with anyone.
Okay. Yeah. And I mean, if anyone can't remember those 4 letters.com, there is a link just above this video or right here on screen. If anyone would like to, to take a look. And so I'm guessing if someone comes onto the website, do they submit the film, or do they first get in touch with you and then ask?
Yeah. So they can go to the submit. There's a submit film link. You can go there, fill in the form, or you can simply email us at films@ember.com. Either way, will get to us.
Okay, and we've got a question over here from William. So to recap, is it better to handle marketing or begin the process before you step onto the movie set?
So build your audience right? Build your audience. Start building your audience. Get on social media. Have some behind the scenes when you do step on the film set. If you have a particularly interesting storyboard, you know, just post things like that. Go to, and again, I can't emphasize this enough, understand who your audience is going to be, and, you know, market to that niche. Don't spend your time or waste your time marketing to people that just aren't going to care. So yeah, absolutely start that prior. Now, don't start paid advertising or paid marketing prior to that, because you're just going to waste money. If you're a big studio and you have money to waste, you'll do that because people will constantly hear, you know, the name of the film, and they'll eventually go see it just out of rote, you know, habit. But if you're an independent filmmaker and you're on a budget, I wouldn't start paid marketing until probably about 60 days. If you want to do it 90 days, somewhere in 60 to 90 day mark prior to the release of your film.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. And personally, I love crowdfunding. I'm quite an advocate of crowdfunding, not because of the money, but because it forces you to figure out who your audience is before you even start making the film. You build that audience. You have to create the key art. You have to start marketing before you create the film. That makes the rest of the process a lot easier.
No, that's a great point. Yeah, we've had a few filmmakers who've done that and been successful. We've had a few that have done that and haven't been successful in terms of their financial goals or their revenue goals. But like you said, it's not just about receiving the finances for whatever you're trying to do. It's also about starting to engage that audience and understanding how to engage an audience.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for coming on. I mean, I know I learned a lot. I hope everyone else did as well. You guys had some great questions as well. So, you know, thank you so much for taking the time and coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, ZB. I appreciate it.
Great. All right. Thank you, guys. Hope you have a great rest of the day, whether it's evening or morning, depending on where you are. And yeah, we'll hope to see you guys at the next Cine Circle event. So thank you and take care.